Piers. No, Piers, you spoke uninterrupted, and so did the other guests. So let me finish the thought before you disagree with it, please.
Fair enough.
The second point here is I actually agree with, which is that there are systemic issues here. There's poverty, there's homelessness, there are all these things that a lot of the world does not pay attention to until there is a crisis. That's not a BLM issue, that's not a conservative issue, that's not a left or right issue. The fact of the matter is we ignore this. The failure of the system here is not what happened on that subway. It's the fact that a person with mental illness can go untreated, unsupported, and houseless without any support, and then we end up with situations like this.
Well, you only can understand it if you're in Manhattan and you're in the mind of DA Alvin Bragg. There's a whole lot we can talk about there. Not a lot of things that office wants to prosecute outside of Donald Trump and Daniel Penny and other heroes.
America First TV favorite Tomi Lahren went on Piers Morgan uncensored, and the Democrat destroyer Tomi Lahren completely obliterates woke commentator Mark Lamont-Hill. Let's have a look at this clip where Tomi Lahren and Piers Morgan dismantle woke propagandist Mark Lamont-Hill.
Tomi Lahren, host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick, and Professor Mark Lamont-Hill, host of Bet News. Well, welcome to all of you. I want to start with the Daniel Penny breaking news, if I can, with you, Tomi, because I've been sort of incandescent about this case, as I think you have from the start. The idea that a war hero is in his civilian life on a subway and watches a completely deranged lunatic threatening to kill people, and he apprehends him and prevents him from harming anybody, and in the process, clearly, accidentally, didn't mean to do this, the guy falls unconscious and then he dies. And it's a tragic accident that happened, but it was entirely precipitated by this deranged lunatic going on a subway and threatening to kill people. A subway system, by the way, in New York, where people have been killed quite regularly in recent years. This guy is a hero, and yet he was treated like a criminal who should be thrown into jail for the rest of his life. Now, I think justice has been served, and he's been released, a free man, but with huge damage to his life, to his reputation, and so on. What do you make of this case?
Well, I'll also say damage to his reputation if he chooses to remain in New York City. If he comes to a great red state like the one I'm in right now, Tennessee or Texas or many other great states around this country, he'll be treated like the hero that he is. There's a lot I have to say on this, Piers, but I'd also say for those BLM grifters who are now coming out threatening to burn down the city, making this all about their race-baiting grift, how dare you, and shame on you. You did not care about Jordan Neely when he was a homeless man living on the streets, struggling with mental health problems and possibly a drug addiction. You didn't care about him then. You probably stepped over him on your way elsewhere. But now all of a sudden, when you can use his name and you can use his death to fundraise for BLM or to get out your pent-up aggression or to claim racism, now all of a sudden you care about someone like Jordan Neely. It's all too rich for me, Piers. Expect to see New York City once again descend into mayhem and chaos because BLM needs attention. The pro-terrorists, anti-Semites, anti-Israel protesters have been taking all the wind out of their sails, getting all the attention. So now they want to be back in the headlines. But I don't think they're going to be met with the same sentiment that they had with George Floyd in 2020. People are sick and tired of this, and people know that Daniel Penny was a hero, is a hero, and should be treated like one.
Well, that's how I feel. A lot of people don't. Hawk Newsom, the founder of BLM in New York, has said that anyone who thinks Penny is innocent has racism in their heart before saying the KKK got another victory. Hypocrisy. Now, I want to play, before I go to you, Mark, I want to play, this is a clip of Jordan Neely's father talking about his reaction to the verdict.
I just want to say, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. Really, really hurts. What are we going to do, people? What's going to happen to us now? I had enough of this. System is rigged.
And to Tomi Lahren's point, before Mark Lamont-Hill comments, I want to add that his dad, Jordan Neely's dad, is also to blame. Not only was Black Lives Matter not there for Jordan Neely when he was going through his, 42 arrests, his addiction problems and mental health problems and everything else, his dad wasn't there for him either. And now, just like Black Lives Matter, Jordan Neely's dad is trying to capitalize, financially gain from this situation, right? Once Jordan Neely is gone, now they're there against Daniel Penny.
Now, Mark, I'm sorry. Listen, I've got a lot of feeling for any father whose son dies in those circumstances. But the idea the system has been rigged over this, the idea that this guy, Jordan Neely, clearly mentally unwell, homeless, and potentially violent, nobody knew his propensity for violence. All they knew was he was acting in a very threatening way and threatening to kill people. And you have a guy who's from the military, who knows how to disarm people, who did exactly what he was trained to do. And then an accident occurred, and it's incredibly unfortunate. But he did not want to let this guy go in case he got up and carried out his threat. Are you really going to try and argue? I don't know if you are. I'm just pointing a question to you, really. But is this really the way it's being framed, as a victory for the KKK? That if you don't think this guy is guilty, you've got racism in your heart?
I don't think that that's the dominant position from people like myself who are critical of what happened and who are disappointed in the outcome of the trial. I think it's too simplistic to say that anybody who disagrees with me is a member of the KKK or has beliefs like the KKK. I think that becomes almost like a straw man argument. I think there are a few things that we need to talk about with regard to framing. The first thing is, as you pointed out, Piers, this man is mentally unwell. This person was struggling with mental illness. That's very different than the initial introduction to this segment that you gave, where you said he was a deranged lunatic. And as you repeated multiple times, deranged lunatic, it would communicate to the audience and to everyday people everywhere that the only way to stop this person from, destroying the subway and killing everybody was to put him in a 6-minute chokehold.
But he was behaving like a deranged lunatic. Sorry, Mark, he was. I mean, it's indisputable. Nobody knew at the time what his mental health status was. All they knew was he was behaving. He was behaving in a lunatic manner, threatening and potentially dangerous. Nobody knew if he was armed. Nobody knew what he might do. People were terrified. So I'm afraid, for all intents and purposes, the guy was behaving like a deranged lunatic. It turns out, after the event, we discover he has mental illness. But let's not pretend that in the moment he wasn't acting like a deranged lunatic, because he was.
I wasn't. I wasn't saying that. You interrupted before I could finish the thought. You would understand I wasn't saying that. What I'm saying is that someone with a mental illness may or may not be violent. Most people with mental illnesses in public space, according to all the evidence, all the data, are not violent threats. And so I'm saying that we should not presume that they are. I don't have an issue with you saying, hey, I'm going to subdue this person because I believe that they are unsafe for the particular context that we're in. What I take issue with is saying that I'm going to put them in a 6-minute chokehold because that's the only way to stop them from doing harm when we don't know that. And that's the additional piece of this. The second piece of this, the second piece of this, What
would you have done?
Piers. No, Piers, you spoke uninterrupted and so did the other guests. So let me finish the thought before you disagree with it, please.
Fair enough.
The second point here is I actually agree with, which is that there are systemic issues here. There's poverty, there's homelessness, there are all these things that a lot of the world does not pay attention to until there is a crisis. That's not a BLM issue, that's not a conservative issue, that's not a left or right issue. The fact of the matter is we ignore this. The failure of the system here is not what happened on that subway. It's the fact that a person with mental illness can go untreated, unsupported, and houseless without any support, and then we end up with situations like this.
Right, but for his father to be lecturing everybody in the way that he did, again, I don't have a lack of empathy for him losing his son, but the lecture that he gave, his son is wandering around as a homeless, mentally ill person on the subway threatening people. With all due respect to his father, where was his father in his life? I mean, is that a reasonable question to ask? If that was one of my sons, I would feel an accountability and responsibility for the actions of one of my children. Would you?
I probably would, but I also don't think that that's the most important question. I may share with you the opinion. In fact, I do share with you the opinion that, hey, we should talk about family structures. We should talk about parenting. We should talk about fatherhood. But when a father's son is dead in this moment, we as a nation, just like with the healthcare issue, we have an opportunity to talk about the broader system instead of us criticizing how a mourning father is dealing with his dead son. Let's talk about the conditions that got us there.
I just sense that there's already a building momentum for this to be treated like a mini George Floyd situation. Now, I found the George Floyd story horrific. I thought what that police officer did was indefensible and appalling. But it's a completely different set of circumstances. This guy, Daniel Penny, he's a Marine veteran. He's on a subway and he's watching somebody directly threatening to kill people. And he apprehends him and he holds him down because he doesn't want him to be a threat to the lives of people around him. That used to be the kind of behavior that would win people medals for valor. Now you end up in a criminal court facing the rest of your life in a prison cell. And that's what I find so just, I can't understand it. How has society moved to punishing people like Daniel Penny for doing a good citizen's job, trying to protect people? I don't get it.
Well, you only can understand it if you're in Manhattan and you're in the mind of DA Alvin Bragg. There's a whole lot we can talk about there. Not a lot of things that office wants to prosecute outside of Donald Trump and Daniel Penny and other heroes. But I would also say this, when we're talking about this case and Daniel Penny, and we're talking about the race element here, let's keep in mind, Daniel Penny is a big guy. He's strong. He's young. He's a former Marine. If he's on that subway and Jordan Neely comes in threatening people, probably the last person that's going to be the victim is Daniel Penny. He can hold his own. Daniel Penny stood up to protect people that maybe couldn't protect themselves, right. The women, the children. Also, if you look at the footage from that subway, a lot of those people in the subway were people of color. So you have a white man that's standing up to protect people of color in a subway, and yet BLM is so desperate for their grift and for their attention that they really want to make this about race. The way I see it is you have a Marine, who cares that he's white, standing up to protect people. He didn't care what color Neely was. He didn't care what color the people were around him. Yeah. He wanted to do the right thing.
I completely agree. Mark, it has nothing to do with skin color. And people that try and imply that it is, they are the ones playing the race card. I honestly believe that on this story. I've studied it in detail. I've seen all the footage. I've seen all the accounts. This is not a race story. Daniel Penny didn't do anything predicated on the skin color of Jordan Neely. He did it to protect people, as Tomi said, black, white, whoever. They were a multiracial subway at the time. Right? Where's the race element of this?
I'm fascinated by the certainty with which you say.
Well, you tell me why I'm wrong.
Motivated by
tell me why
race.
I'm wrong.
I'm not telling you you're wrong. What I'm telling you is that I have no idea what was in Daniel Penny's head. He could have been motivated by race. He could not have been motivated by race.
The jury, that's why they disconnected him.
I would disagree with anyone who says he did that because of race. But I would also disagree with you saying unequivocally that race wasn't on his mind. You have no idea, but you have
there is no evidence
to say things.
There's no evidence.
Mark Lamont-Hill is way out of line here, implying that there could have been some type of race element into Daniel Penny's motives is complete bullshit. Like Tomi Lahren said, he was protecting people of all color, all races, all religions. He didn't know about anybody's backstory in that place. He just saw a threat and he neutralized it. And to her point that he was a big, strong Marine, had Jordan Neely actually stepped out of line and started, punching people or whatever, everybody would have been looking to Daniel Penny to step in and stop it. He's the biggest dude there. So there was almost this obligation from the public for him to do something to stop it at one point or another. And so the fact that he did it before anybody got hurt is commendable. It's unfortunate that somebody died in the process. But the reality is the innocent people were protected and remained unharmed. And to Pierce's point, the jury decided that there was no racial motivation. So for Mark Lamont-Hill to imply that there still could have been is complete race baiting bullshit. And so with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, And I'll remind you, you can catch me live every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern on the Jar Openers podcast that's on this channel. I hope to see you guys there. And also, I have a Discord. The link is down in the description. And with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video.